everybody. Nice to see everybody here. Don't worry, not going to stand on ceremony too long. We're going to get right to the reason you came here today. We're going to get right to the exciting stuff. I know you're waiting with bated breath out there. So yeah, without much ado, let's just dive right into the reason you're here today. Ivan the Terrible. All what you came here to learn about. Now, Ivan the Terrible is, of course, a character from history who, people are fascinated by the bloody campaigns that he led. People are fascinated by kind of his place in Russian history. For example, the fact that the Tsar of Russia, that's entirely something that originated with Ivan the Terrible. Before this, they were only known as grand princes. Ivan the Terrible was the one who coined the Tsar thing, because Tsar comes from Caesar. Caesar, the connotations there is that the power vested in him as a monarch comes directly from divinity. So much is known about who he was as a political figure, but what really sticks in people's craw about him, like why he's so fascinating to people so many centuries later, is also his illustrious personal life. Here's a guy who had enough wives that this subject warrants its own Wikipedia page. He famously killed his son in an act of rage, as seen in this famous painting. Interesting things about his personal life also, he was also a poet and a composer. As a matter of fact, a Threnody to St. Peter that he composed was on the first CD ever issued by the Soviets, in the mid-'80s or so. So there is a really interesting kind of cultural legacy of Ivan the Terrible. And you feel that? You feel all the air go out of the room? You feel your eyes glazing over? See, something's wrong here, right? What am I doing wrong? What I'm doing wrong here is that I've effectively brought a knife to a gunfight. I'm talking to you about 16th century Russian monarchs when you came here to learn about marketing and distributing your short film. So, not very good, right? It's that itself seems like kind of a failure of marketing. So what's my error? Why am I losing you? Because I don't know my audience. And that's all it takes. Who am I actually? Well, the important thing is I am nobody, and that's kind of an important thing. We're going to come back to that. I don't have a Wikipedia page to my name. I don't have any important familial connections. I had a cousin who was a voice actress on The Last Airbender. That's pretty much it. I don't have 20 years experience in the industry. I am not a marketing guru. I'm not really anybody important, and that's pretty key. But who am I actually? My name is Augustine Dalton. I am a former ecology major who in 2019, shortly on the eve of the COVID-19 pandemic, decided to start making short films. In 2021, I founded my LLC, Gloomy, Texan Media. It's a little production company based here out of Olympia, Washington. Do you know me? Have you seen anything I've done? Probably not, but there is a reason that I'm here today, and that is that I have put myself out there. And that statistically is kind of a hard thing to do. A lot of people don't do it for reasons that are not even their fault, but we'll get to that. So, two notes about this is that I'm going to be speaking from my experience as a filmmaker. So everything that I'm talking about has to do with the making and marketing of narrative and documentary cinema. It might not be directly applicable to other things people might be working on, video, web series, whatever, but I think the basic lessons are transferable, and really there's many of the underlying mechanisms are about the same, so bear with me. The other thing is, on that basis, I'm going to do my very best to not self-promote to an egregious degree, as much as Robert might want me to. Not because I couldn't, because I will. And that's not a self-deprecating joke. That's actually a very important thing that you have to keep in mind in this enterprise. So am I some big overnight success? No, but there's a reason my fellow Dallas diaspora, Robert Cam, invited me here to speak, and that's because I can say that I have put myself out there, and that's a theme we're going to be focusing on, putting yourself out there. So how hard can it be to put yourself out there, right? I mean, if you don't have a good gauge on that question, don't worry, because most people don't. When people are kind of deferring to an example like how can it be done, how can people who don't have like big industry connections, who aren't otherwise established, how do they make a name for themselves in independent filmmaking? There tends to be like the holy trinity of names that they bring up as examples of how it can be done. They bring up Quentin Tarantino, Robert Rodriguez, Kevin Smith. You know, those are like kind of the '90s holy trinity of examples they bring up, and for a reason, because like those guys, their success stories. I mean, the anecdotes, some apocryphal and some verified. You know, they're lauded stories for a reason. People know these. That Kevin Smith shot his first movie at the place he worked. You know, shot entirely at night between actual shifts working there. Tarantino was a video store clerk, apropos of that, who within a couple of years became the face of independent filmmaking in the American 90s. Robert Rodriguez edited his first movie, his first feature film, on a public library computer, and later wrote a book about the experience of shooting with no crew and you know, effectively no budget. And these are great stories. They make for great pep talks about how these kind of things can be done. They get lauded as examples of like, well, of course, if they can do it, why can't you? And that still holds true, right? I mean, because if they can do it, why can't you? Well, hang on. Because here's three things you want to consider. First of all, that any success story, any big lauded success story, is always going to have an element of survivorship bias, right? So there's that tendency to look at something that's statistically rare and say, well, oh, this is possible, so it must be probable. Second of all, these three guys that I mentioned, I mean, they're big names like in the 90s indie wave, and people defer to them as examples of how it can be done. You have to also remember these three guys had another person on their side, a certain producer who, you know, we won't name him, he's in prison now, a guy who, but the point being that, you know, it's not all a matter of gumption, but also a matter of who do you know. And the third big thing is that, you know, about on average, when did these guys have their big breakout successes? On average, the average year when this happened, it was like 1994. That's the year I was born, and I'm almost 30. So to put it lightly, a lot has changed since then. You know, a lot has changed, like the way that we consume media, period, has changed, but also the abilities people have now as like DIY filmmakers. I mean, the prosumer market of like technology has changed, like anybody, because there was a time when, yeah, if you could scrap together the funds to shoot something on like a 35 millimeter, 16 millimeter film, if you could scrap together the actual means to do it, like odds are you were probably the only one doing it in your little city, except for like maybe a few other film students. And so yeah, it was all that much more likely that sure, you were probably actually going to make it into a major festival or whatever. But that's not the same anymore. The internet has changed everything, obviously. You know, the market is saturated. And that same thing actually goes not just saturated with filmmakers, but arguably, and we'll get to this, kind of saturated with festivals and venues as well, kind of bringing down the average value of that. I mean, you want to talk about saturation, I mean, there is more market for like a new SoundCloud rapper than there is for a new independent filmmaker at this point. You know, and so yeah, what you think is like, oh, wow, I'm so glad I woke up on a Saturday to have this jerk come tell me my dreams aren't possible. No. Now bear with me, because a lot of what I'm going to be saying here are things that I wish somebody had said to me like 3 or 4 years ago. There's things that would have given me like way more of an advantage then, and frankly, it's going to give you an advantage over like most people who head out on this endeavor. Being realistic is a big key to this enterprise. And as somebody who's spent a lot of time in filmmaking spaces, whether you're talking about like actually at festivals meeting filmmakers or in online spaces, which is more common now, let me tell you, this enterprise is full of really unrealistic people. So I don't have, I have no, in being realistic, I don't have any special prerogative for just coming and bumming people out. But I do want to set this up by kind of avoiding the toxic positivity that comes with some things because, well, I'm going to give you a couple anecdotes. I mean, I want to tell you about people I've encountered in online filmmaking spaces, and kind of the expectations they have. Like, I ran into a guy who came on, and this was actually this was like a subreddit on like r/filmmakers or something like that. Just entire, like it's a 100,000 or so group with like, it's all amateur filmmakers. There's gonna be a few like pros or semi-pros in there or whatever, but mostly it's people just starting out. And this guy makes this post demanding that somebody get him in touch with producer Jason Blum, because his idea, he's just like some guy from Iowa, and his idea is just that good that somebody needs to get him in touch with like one of the big indie producers, one of the big name indie producers in the game. And that's I wish that was like anomalous in terms of like how unrealistic some people are, but first of all, 'cause there's a lot of people who do think like, oh yeah, having an idea for a movie, that's enough. Like, let me tell you something, ideas are a dime a dozen. Nobody really cares about, that's why pitch meetings in like the system are so hard to get into, is because nobody cares about ideas. People care about who you're connected to, who can vouch for you, and do you have like a track record that suggests that you're able to pull something like this off, which is kind of why, besides just the advantage of getting some practical, cutting your teeth on the ground experience, filmmakers gravitate toward making short films, because you have a short film, that's a calling card. It's something you can shop around at a festival. It suggests it gives everything a person needs to know about your technical prowess, about what you're interested in, what you can do with actors, and how capable you are with all the technical stuff, and how capable you are as a networker as well. So that's kind of the advantage of festivals. We're going to get into that in a second. So it's 2019, and I've recently graduated from Evergreen State College with a major in wildlife ecology. The big kind of end game is like, yeah, I want to make movies, but one doesn't just, even from a young age, I kind of understood one doesn't just do that. So I thought, all right, well, what do I do to kind of give myself the freedom to do that? Well, I got to find a job that like pays me well. Okay, what pays me well? Well, maybe this, maybe that. Like I started off being interested in business. Business is so boring. But everybody should take at least one class. If you want to talk about realism, everybody should take at least one program semester class in business and finance just to cut their teeth on it and apply it to whatever they learn later. Because, like I said, you can never shed too much naivete. So for a long time, I was an author of prose. I got a few bylines here or there, but it was kind of, by the summer of 2019, it was kind of going nowhere. And somehow, I don't remember the exact circumstances, but I saw an ad for the Olympia Film Festival, which was still going at the time. They had like a proper Olympia Film Festival. They still have like locals only and stuff like that. They don't have like a big festival like they used to, as it currently stands. But I saw that the deadline was like December 23rd. It was August, September at the time, and I thought something finally, because in years of being a prose author, I thought, oh, you know what? Eventually, I'll get like a book deal, and then I'll have enough money to like parlay that into making a movie. But something about seeing that deadline for a film festival in my town and having capable people around me, because I had my friend Gabe Hall, whose birthday it is, by the way. Happy birthday, Gabe. I'm going to show you this later. You're not going to see it. Who is a thespian who has his own YouTube channel, part-time comedy, where he does skits with his brother. I had capable people around me, and it finally, something in that moment, like the stars aligning, finally clicked. I thought, I could just do it. I could just do it. Like if all I have to do is get a hold of like some gear, which I had a bit more money at the time, so that was feasible. I could actually make something short. Just get it in this local festival and see what happens. Because I've been talking about it for years, but something about seeing that deadline in that particular time was a revelatory moment, and I couldn't explain why, but it was. So I got on it. Through that entire fall season, I had the huge learning curve of teaching myself how to make a movie. And when I say learning, I mean like everything. I taught myself. I had to teach, playlist upon playlists, teaching myself the basics of cinematography, basics of composition, basics of not just screenwriting was fine because I'd already had like a little bit of experience with that anyway. It was just a little project that didn't go anywhere. But like teaching myself kind of how to direct, how to get good performances from actors. And I knew I had a good thespian on my side, so I know that I would ease the blow there somewhat. Teaching myself sound, that's a huge, because sound is 70% of what you see, is what they say with film. So you do not want to like sell that short, because an audience will forgive something that looks like it was shot on an iPhone from 2011. They will not forgive shoddy sound. And that you want to talk about like transferable lessons? That's not just filmmaking. That's not just filmmaking. That's your vlogs. That's your presentations. That's whatever. I mean, sound is king. So yeah, I got on it, made a film, and it had a lot of the little pitfalls of like making your first short film. Right. For one thing, it was too long. It was like, I think the first assembly cut ran like 26 minutes or something absurd like that. I eventually kind of wrangled it down to 19, and even that is too long, because the thing is, it's really hard to kill your darlings when you're doing your first short film, because every frame you capture, you are so in love with, because I'm making a movie. I'm making a movie. So of course, it's something you would see in somebody else's film and say, like, okay, obviously this is bloated, this scene is belabored, this is going on too long. For you, I mean, it's the kiss of the muses. There's no reason you would think of cutting it. If you can get it below 10 minutes, that's ideal, because you have to think from a programmer's point of view, a festival programmer's point of view, about like little blocks that things are going into. You have a comedy block, a drama block, locals block, whatever, and they want to allow for as many people as possible, but the big economy you're working against there is time. So if you have some short film that's running like 20 odd minutes, like that means it has to be of exceptional quality, because the opportunity cost there is they're having to short, however many other films to present that in that block, which means something else has to go. Is yours actually worth it? And what I found out was that, yeah, the first short film I made was not actually worth it. It got submitted a little late. I don't think that really helped my odds. So that's what ended up happening. Got it almost just past the deadline, 23rd. By January, big classic first heartbreak story. First submission, first rejection. Yeah, I was probably bummed about it for about a day, and then I think that evening it's like, okay, well, you know what? Time to keep submitting. And what happened then led to the first year and a half of filmmaking for me, kind of not counting that little preamble, where I had four big events. The first big one was like the first film fest I ever got accepted in, the first real film festival I ever got accepted in, the first film festival I ever got to attend in person, and the first real film festival I ever got to attend in person. So the first one, I got my first film. I got my first acceptance in. I won't name it because I'm basically about to call it a scam. There is a series of these film festivals out there. They have different chapters, and like there's one of them in LA, and one of them in New York, and one of them in Berlin, and one of them in Japan, and one of them. They are known as. They're basically the Full Sail University of film festivals. Like they're diploma mill equivalents of film festivals. They're basically laurel mills because you can submit to them cheaply or maybe even for free, but all you're really getting out of it is the nice little laurel to put on your poster, which looks nice. But the thing is, these are festivals that are they're online, and like I hate to say it, but most online festivals are ripoffs. At worst they're ripoffs. Minimally, they're just money sinks. Because the big advantage of a film festival really is the in-person experience, because you get to meet people, you get to network, you get to have that kind of glorious experience of seeing something you made on a big screen the way you wanted it to be seen, and having other people laugh at things that you wanted them to laugh at, maybe things you didn't want them to laugh at, have them recoil at things that you meant to be troubling, whatever. You're having the theatrical experience with something you made, and then you get to talk to people about it after. You get to talk with programmers, you get to talk with other filmmakers, you get to, if you get lucky, you get to meet, some producer or something says, hey, I like what you do. Take my card. Here's my email. Let's talk in the future. That's like the kind of the dream experience. Online festivals, what you're getting out of it is a laurel, and sure, that looks great on your poster, but there's no. So like with this particular fest that I'm talking about, there's no physical screening. They might tell you that, but there is none. There is no physical screening anywhere. Nobody is really even going to see it because it's not like. I'm not even naming it, but it's not like a particularly it's not a household name. There's like maybe 3 actual household name film festivals in existence, period, and this online one ain't one of them. So there are a lot of things like that. But you know what? Hey, I didn't pay for it, which is fine, because it was kind of a first-time filmmaker kind of special. So it looked good on the poster at first, and that's all I could possibly ask for it. But, that's just how a lot of these things are. Now, the first time I got into a real film festival, I made. Well, we'll go back a little bit there. So, I remember it was February, like late February of 2020, and my wife and I were coming back from Mardi Gras. As we're coming back into SeaTac, I remember my mother texted me and said, like, hey, heads up, when you get back to the airport, they're saying something about a virus that just landed in Seattle. It's probably nothing, but they're saying they got the first case of something called Corvid or something like that. I didn't think much of it at the time. So then a few months later in lockdown, I had suppressed the itch to make anything because it was just not practical to do so at that point. And entire Hollywood productions were shutting down over it. What chance did smaller independent filmmakers have? Until it occurred to me that, well, why don't we use what we have? Because I only had that one short film under my belt at that point. Why don't we use what we have here? Because I still had Gabe, my main man, and he was working an essential job, just like me. We were experiencing the trenches of this, at the height of that summer of COVID-19, of what it was doing, because we were both working like retail at the time, so we were like, second to actual healthcare workers. Like we were there on the front line of what was happening, of how ugly things were getting out there. And I said to him, you know what? I have a DSLR. I have your thespian abilities. I can rig a mic onto my person or your person somehow. Why don't we just make something? Why don't we just make something about this moment right now? That's where our short film entitled Due to Unforeseen Circumstances came from. It's just, it's a short film set and shot entirely in quarantine. Spent almost no money on it. And I remember beforehand, I was seeing talk online, because you gather it by now. I spent a lot of time in like filmmaking spaces, Reddit, Facebook, whatever. And people were saying like, yeah, what if I wasn't the first person to come up with this idea, but people were getting shouted down for doing this because I was like, oh, don't make a film about this while it's happening, because that's in poor taste. And I kind of befuddled by that middle class morality. I almost kind of agreed with that at first, and then I realized, like, wait a minute, I'm living this every day that I go to work, and they're telling me that I can't make a statement about what we're experiencing as everyday people with this art form. But it's okay when they make some, I don't know, Mark Wahlberg makes some lousy Hollywood movie about it 3 years from now. No, I'm gonna make this movie. So we did, and that became our most decorated, that like got into fests, because all the fests were going online anyway. All the festivals, even like big, like reputable names were going online at that point anyway. So I actually got into some serious festivals that way. I got some like just like little Laurel Farm ones too, but that became our kind of most decorated film. I think because it just spoke to what people were going through, and it was kind of an audacious thing to do, if I may say so myself. But and that included getting into a real festival, like a real honest to goodness festival that we're actually going back to this August, West Sound Film Festival over in Bremerton. It's a great little venue, the Roxy Historic Theater. They have like serious people who love the art form there. They actually draw audiences from, they're all over Washington State, like kind of that whole area of the Sound. People come from Seattle, people come from Tacoma. Like, people come and talk to you about the film. So I wouldn't actually get to physically attend it for another year. But that was like such a revelation that a real festival, not just like, okay, we got your money, go away, like responded to something that we did. So about a year later, 2021, this is actually shortly after I decided, like, okay, let's make it official, make this into an LLC, which is where Gloomy, Texan Media was founded. I got a phone call about another short that I did shortly after that. I got a phone call from somewhere I'd submitted in that Southern California vortex. I shouldn't name the festival. I'm not going to do that. That's rude. No, I could. It's like, I got a phone call saying, like, hey, we're going to do, like, things are opening back up now. It's like mid-2021. We're thinking about doing an actual in-person festival. Would you be interested in coming down to, like, unnamed city in the LA vortex and checking it out? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Because at this point, everything's been online. I've never seen something that I was physically there to hit record on a large screen like that. So that's totally over the moon to me. And he said, like, yeah. I mean, the only thing we ask from you is just like whatever $80 for the DCP. The DCP, that's a digital cinema package. It's how they project things in the digital age. So yeah, went down to that festival, and let me tell you about this festival without naming it. It is another one of those, like, it's a Laurel Farm. It's not like an actual huge thing that draws crowds. And when we got there, we were the only people in the audience at the little multiplex auditorium that they'd rented out for this. That's one thing. It's digression. One thing you always discover when walking around Hollywood or parts of LA, it's like weirdly empty, and that's a great metaphor for like the industry at large. It's like it's gorgeous and very carefully cultivated, but it's so empty when you're out there walking around. Because we walked around that mall for a while, like an hour before the screening, and like, yeah, there's nobody out there and nothing's open. Granted, it's like coming down from COVID, but it's just that's the atmosphere. But still, that was pretty rad. I mean, seeing something, having never had that experience of seeing something you made on a big screen before, and seeing your own face and your friends' faces, and knowing like, yeah, this is something that came from your brain into other people's ears, into the camera, onto the hard drive, onto the online, and now it's actually here, this experience. I mean, that more than made up for it. Despite the fact that the DCP was obviously broken, because in the last like 30 seconds the audio was off horribly. Whatever. Thank goodness there was only one other person in the audience. Am I right? But then, like later that year, we actually got to physically go to the West Sound Film Festival, which is where our quarantine film showed, and that was an awesome experience because you get that, and the DCP wasn't broken. Okay, and like there's people after that who want to come up to you and talk to you about it. Like that's incredible stuff. That's an incredible experience. And so that short film got a lot of laurels, and which I'll show toward the end of the slide, like how many laurels it got. It got a lot of selections. It probably is the most selected. And the reason for that, it's no secret, it's COVID, because things were going online. It just smoked people at the time. But the more important thing I'm going to get to, and kind of like what I've been driving at with this point about like, there's a Sturgeon's Law thing going on where most film festivals are. Well, they're kind of junk, honestly, because they're usually like money laundering scams, or like they're not things that are actually they're not cultivated by curated by serious people. They're things that are take your money, get a laurel out of it. That's why laurels aren't everything. That's why probably people who've been doing it for a while can look at a poster for a film, a short film, whatever, see it's decorated with laurels, and be like, okay, well, this is cool. This one's from like an actual film festival that has like a big attendance and a big following by people who care about the art form. And this is like so-and-so's Behind the Car Wash Awards 2023. Okay, cool. I mean, it's nice that you have all these on the same poster, but there's going to be a difference in appreciation involved. I guess probably since there's an instructional, I probably should get to this. Film Freeway. This is actually the means by which people submit films. There are other ones, but this is the one that matters. Film Freeway. It's free to make. Most all film festivals, certainly the reputable ones, will be on here, and including the disreputable ones. They'll be on here, and this is the primary means by which people submit their feature or short films, or there's like screenwriting stuff on there too, if that's your thing. How it works is, you make an account. There is like a paid option if you want to get more waivers or just kind of reduce the price you have to pay for submissions, because submitting ain't always cheap. And one cool thing is that they do allow you to do promotions. So let's say you have a new short film out. You're not quite sure which festivals will go for it, which won't. Well, they give you the option to do like, short of the week, for your consideration type things where you pay $10, $20 for a single day, and the website or whoever runs it, they will float your project to across the desks of all these different film festivals, and the ones who like it say, hey, we saw your project, we think it might be a good fit. Here's a 75% off discount. Here's a 50% discount. Here's 25%. Here's if we really like it, here's a full-on fee waiver. And what do you find when you do that is you're going to find there's a lot of, again, same Sturgeon's Law as always. There's just a lot of junk out there. But there's some really cool smaller fests that want to kind of build a relationship with new filmmakers, and that's pretty cool too. So that's kind of the basic of how Film Freeway works. Again, same kind of thing where it's kind of like Vimeo, where there's different stages of you can do the pro one and have those more of those advantages. It's just kind of makes things cheaper, and it's much like IMDb, which I guess I might as well just talk about IMDb now. If you want to get yourself out there on IMDb, which is a really convenient way for people to see all of your work kind of curated in one place that people, it's a website people actually use. There's almost nothing to actually making a title for IMDb. There's very little in the way of like verification process. Like you just submit to them. I mean, you have to have an account, and probably, don't hold me to it, but I think you probably have an IMDb account if you have an Amazon account, because it's like the YouTube Google thing where it's like, if you have a Gmail, then you have a YouTube channel or YouTube account just kind of by default, even if you haven't uploaded or done anything on it. I think the same thing is true because I think Amazon still owns IMDb. Amazon owns most things. So yeah, an account is free to make. Now, if you want to be a little more serious about it, there is such a thing as IMDb Pro. Now, IMDb Pro, sort of like Film Freeway, where it's either like, $12 a month or $150 a year, or however it's done. They will give you the option to actually curate the information a little bit better on IMDb. Like you can add more posters. You can add you can find connections and add other people, other actors who may not have pages yet. Stuff like it gives you. I'll tell you this. There's probably a lot of things you can also that I just described. You can also do with IMDb regular, but IMDb Pro is also a lot faster, and it gives you. And if you want to do more like kind of industry-based inside baseball stuff, it gives you access to actors and creators and their agency phone numbers, emails, stuff like that. So yeah, make an IMDb Pro account if you have the option. So YouTube. Much of what I've said about filmmaking, about how the market is really saturated at this point, that applies to YouTube as well. It might sound a little silly, like I'm just repeating, but you have to understand these are very distinct phenomenons. Like what is a big draw at film festivals among people in the film industry, it does not necessarily translate to YouTube, and what is a big deal, what might even go viral on YouTube, is not necessarily going to be a festival draw. They are fairly discrete worlds, and I want to kind of elucidate what I mean by that. So getting yourself out there, but on YouTube. Now, a bit of it about the history of YouTube. About 10, 15 years ago, it was totally feasible to upload something on YouTube and have it get, hundreds or a couple thousand views just by default, without promoting it anywhere else, without doing advertising, without trying to like artificially do any kind of word of mouth stuff. Like, it was possible because that's another market that was not totally saturated yet. Now if you upload something to YouTube and you don't already have like a firm subscriber base, and you don't have any kind of word of mouth, and it's not something somebody else is promoting, you upload something just out of the blue right now onto YouTube, it'll start at no views, and check on it like another 3 years from now, it'll move up to maybe 5 views by accident. Like that's the reality of things on YouTube at this point. Like, it's not anything like it used to be. Like me just messing around as like a 13-year-old on YouTube in 2007, like that, I could get 10,000 views just by accident, just by having like a funny title, a funny thumbnail. But like, it's a million of those, so it doesn't. I think I don't have the numbers right in front of me right now, but I think there's literally more people on the internet now, and that's kind of a function of that. But I did, in 2021, the same year that I kind of founded our little LLC, I actually did have a short film go quasi-semi-viral. I mean, more views than probably just kind of a nobody should get otherwise, which I'll explain why that's kind of impressive in the landscape in a second. But getting yourself out there on YouTube, and this is kind of how I did it. YouTube advertising. So YouTube has a function where you can advertise your videos based on geography, but based on other people's interests. So actually, like I was kind of telling Robert Cam about this the other day. Like, something you could do with, say, the Live at 5 thing is you could start a YouTube campaign, and this is totally easy. You can just start it pretty much from Google. Start a YouTube campaign where you target people like, okay, Thurston County area, Seattle, Tacoma, if you want to go regional. Like, that's fine too. People who are interested in Saturday Night Live, people who are interested in variety shows, whatever, and then plug like 10, 15 bucks into it, and you have the option where you can do it day by day and just decide when you want to end it, or you can say like, hey, I'm putting $20 into this, spread it over this amount of time, and see what it gets. And it sends those things out there, and there's more elaborate. There's actually 2 versions of it. There's a more elaborate version you can do from like AdSense or whatever it is on YouTube. Which gives you like a really, really, really heightened range of specificity. Like, what videos do you want this advertised on? What channels do you want to see this advertised on? What keywords are you after for this? And that one takes a little bit longer just because there's more details involved, but that's I get you some really good results. There's other things besides YouTube, by the way, for advertising on YouTube, interestingly enough. There's something called Sprizzy, which basically does the exact same service, but it doesn't do it through, it's not YouTube itself doing it. So the reason you might want to do that, by the way, is because when I wanted to advertise our COVID, or, our quarantine film, and I wanted to do it on YouTube because I just wanted to get I wanted to get it out there. I wanted to get some eyeballs on it because that's the reality is it's not just it's not a fiat economy we're living in. It's an attention economy, and a lot of things could, if you remember kind of how that summer went, a lot of things could swallow people's attention really easily. And I wanted to get this film out there and get it seen, and YouTube just struck it down immediately, even just like the trailer for it, because it involved quarantine, involved COVID. So their problem with it, as they phrased it, was sensitive events. And so on that basis, yeah, I couldn't advertise it. So had to kind of for that one to get any views, kind of had to rely on like word of mouth, some of the festival attention, stuff like that, which was fine. I mean, it did end up working. But stuff like Sprizzy, and there's other services as well. I mean, you can Google them. Do give you a little bit of a workaround that's not quite as prickly as YouTube is about that kind of thing. And the way YouTube advertising in particular finally helped me was I had a little short horror film entitled "They're Never Coming Back" go. It got more attention. I think viral is kind of a strong word, but it got more attention than like a nobody with 45 subscribers would typically get, because it took me from like 50, so putting like the first trailer online, then the second trailer online, took me from like 50 subscribers to the 2,500 or so that I'm at now, that the Gloomy Texan Media channel is at now, because it's a film that utilizes like kind of a found footage format, and people were interested in that because I advertised some of the trailers. I said like, yeah, people who are interested in Slender Man, people who are interested in Blair Witch, people who are interested in backroom stuff, analog horror, whatever. Like, I found that audience because I knew kind of who I was looking for, and they actually really responded to that, and I actually got like a pretty good. And that film, when I finally uploaded that film onto YouTube, like it's sitting at like 66,000 or so now, which again, that's not like viral by the standards of our time, but for somebody with no connections and not having a whole lot of budget to bring with it, like that's really nothing to cough at, that type of number. As a younger filmmaker, I was very, very excited about having all these laurels on our quarantine film. Happy birthday, Gabe. But now kind of looking back on it, I can actually tell you like what's sort of serious and what isn't. Let's see. Yeah, first of all, almost any festival with awards in the name is guaranteed to just be a money sink. I mean, like I said, you're getting a laurel out of it, but understand you're getting what you pay for. You're not getting ink, you're not getting a screening. You're just getting a laurel, and that's fine for some people, but I think probably others would say like it's kind of unserious of you. Yeah, like some of these, on the other hand, like Bridge Fest. I know that's an actual, or Couch Film Festival. Those are like actual things up in Vancouver, I think. They actually have like physical screenings. I couldn't go to them when they happened, because I think they probably were online, but I think they did eventually kind of move back into physical screenings. So those are like real things. There's like real up-and-comers. London, Paris International Short Festival. Yeah, no, that probably doesn't actually exist anymore. So you're not really, so looking back, it's funny, like looking back on it now, I can see like, yeah, I was going for quantity over quality of laurels, but that's just kind of how it is when you're young to the profession. Well, anyway, I think I've kind of gotten the major points about festivals themselves, YouTube. I might, at this juncture, with 11 minutes left, I might open the floor to questions, comments, scathing indictments.
One of your opening statements when you first started out is know your audience. Mm-hmm. And can you give me some tips about how to go about that?
Absolutely. I mean, it depends on it. I really like the knife to a gunfight metaphor, because you do have to think about like what it is the people you are looking for want, and thinking about like how those things fit. You know what I mean? So it's like if I tried to, I think now that I have used kind of doubling back on my own channel as an example, because a lot of people who have subscribed, they kind of see me as like a horror filmmaker now. Probably if I just dropped like that quarantine film now, a lot of them would probably just be sort of confused and alienated by it, because it's just a very different animal to what they subscribed for. So that's like kind of that dissonance between, and yet interestingly enough, I did do a very different film after the found footage film, that I ended up losing a few subscribers, but I still have that core there, which is nice. You know, knowing what people want is pretty key to the enterprise.
So do you like research trends and what people are?
Oh yeah. Big part of it goes for the festival game. It definitely goes for the online game. Is just kind of being observant, seeing which way the wind is blowing. Kind of you have a feel for what people are interested in at the moment, and things can be kind of generational too. I know I can advertise, Project A on TikTok because this absolutely appeals to the Zoomers or whatever. The thing is, I advertise Project B to them, and it's just a lead balloon. They're going to have no interest in this at all, because Project B is more of like a festival thing. It's more of like things that the festival programmers are interested in. They think programs well or plays well in their blocks, stuff like that. So yeah, it is a big part of it is just kind of being observant, taking time to kind of see which way these things are rolling.
Do you notice that there's a certain age group too that are more likely to sit and watch movies or go to the movies? Or
it is a little bit. There is actually. I feel like it's not. And sadly, I don't feel like it's entirely the very young people anymore. I feel like it is kind of people my age or a little older than me and beyond who tend to be like the festival audience, because kind of like what I was saying about how things have changed since like the kind of indie darling wave of the 90s is like people just consume media so differently. Like I do. It's a kind of a bleak statement, but I don't feel like people definitely don't consume like movies the same way that they used to. I mean, I think it's almost become, as film and television as television's like kind of caught up with film in terms of like production value, like how much of it they can make, those things are treated kind of interchangeably in my mind, and there's not really like, unless it's some big tentpole thing, there's not really you don't really see that many like event movies anymore, like things that aren't already kind of like proven territory franchises or whatever. They don't feel do as well as they used to. You know what I mean? So people are kind of finding like the mid, like I remember there's this interview, I think it's like the Hot Ones interview with Matt Damon, where he's talking about how like the mid-range budget movie has kind of, that he kind of cut his teeth on in the 90s, has kind of disappeared almost entirely, because it's either like you're either going so low budget, which I'm on like the lower end of, or it's the big budget like tentpole things, and they're kind of the middle ground of like just average budget adult geared films. That's kind of like it's going out of fashion. At the very least, they're not doing the numbers that they would have done just like even 20 years ago. You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't know. There's something I hope it's not true. I hope it's just me being pessimistic about things and extrapolating the wrong conclusion from just trends. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it is kind of a slightly older audience that's still kind of holding on to the dream of the movies, you know.
And then I have a question about, so once a person decides what type of film they want to make, and how do you decide which venue, festival to enter?
I like, my first big point of inspiration when I first decided, like, hey, screw it, I'm just going to do this and start making movies, was to kind of start local. Start with something where people might see it. Start local, start regional, and then kind of see where that goes. The cool thing is with a tool like Film Freeway is that you actually can search festivals. I wish there are so many now. I wasn't kidding about how saturated even that is. How many festivals there are now. You can search festivals by theme. So if you're making something in the horror genre, you can find or science fiction, you can find things that are entirely tailored to that niche, great or small. And if you think, like, you know what, this is something that, like, I think this has viral potential in some way, then you can start thinking about, like, okay, yeah, this is going to be some kind of YouTube exclusive event. This is something the kids are going to like because it's a series, because web series tend to be a little bit more popular with young people. So it's like, okay, I can if it just at the inception, if I know that that's probably more what the spirit of the project's going to be, then I know that's probably the way. But with the festival, I always like to start local. I always like to start local because another great thing is, like, oh, cool. So if it does get selected, that means it's like it's an easy travel, and I can go meet people like really easily. So that's kind of rad, you know.
Local's good. And then would you explain digital cinema package?
Now, I've never actually made one myself, although I know there are some festivals that require you to do it. But digital cinema package, so that is the modern. That's the modern proxy for, like, the actual big projectors they used to have that would, run the 35, 16 millimeter film, or usually 35, 16 blown up, but 35 usually millimeter film through them. I've never actually made one, so I shouldn't speak on it too much. But most festivals will actually make one for you, and it is the means by which they show your film, which is, you made on your desktop computer, and it's in like 4K or whatever, or it's in 2K, and get it to where it will actually fit on a big, nice cinematic screen without losing any artifacts or being overly compressed or being like all the pixels, or because pixels usually, because you're usually shooting on digital, and most people are shooting on digital now, aren't all stretched out and ugly looking. So I don't actually know what it consists of, but that is how they do it. Thanks for hanging out with me here and talking about how to get eyeballs on your work. I just want to thank you for stopping by.